Welcome to DesignCraft, building blocks of level design.
Hello and welcome. So today you're in for a kind of special treat. So how many of you here were here last year and managed to go to the same panel? OK, great. So most of you, this is the first time. And this is actually, we're really excited to do this panel today because this is actually one of the first times that these tools are seen outside of their kind of native environment at Blizzard headquarters. And we get to give you a kind of sneak peek behind the curtain as how we build Azeroth. So before we start, we're going to do some introductions. So do you want to start, Colin?
Hi, I'm Colin Gilbert. I've been on the World of Warcraft team for about 5 years now, and I'm really excited and humbled to kind of be here and show you what we do on a daily basis.
Cool. Hi, I'm Gary Plattner. I've been on the team for 18 years. Feels like a lot longer. I'm a level designer on the World of Warcraft team.
Hi, I'm Sarah Verrill, and I've worked on WoW for 11 years, and I'm super excited to show you guys a little bit of how we create the visual stories of the world.
My name is Craig Morrison, and I'm the design manager for World of Warcraft, and hopefully we'll be able to show you some cool stuff today.
Hello, my name is DeMarcus Holbrook, and I've been here for 4 years. I'm a senior level designer on the WoW team. Looking forward to showing you guys some cool stuff.
Cool. So what we're going to do today is effectively, we're going to talk a little bit about what we're going to do. So we've got 3 designers on stage. We're going to spend about 10 minutes with each talking about different phases of our process when it comes to level design. But before we start all that and we get into the kind of dive into the details of our level design process, I want to ask you a couple of questions. So when we think about characters in World of Warcraft, really, oftentimes there are 2 that we consider to be the most important characters in the world. Now, who do you think the first most important character is? Any ideas? The player. It's you guys. You guys are the heroes. You're the champions of Azeroth. You are the most important character in the game. It's not Illidan. It's not Thrall. It's not Varian. It's you. You guys are the heroes. But we have another important character, one that we feel is probably more important than any of the player characters or any of the NPCs that you interact with, and that's Azeroth itself. Azeroth is a character. It's a real place. This is somewhere where hopefully you out there, you have this affinity to. You've all adventured in, you've traveled through, you've explored, and really what we want to show you today is kind of the passion that goes into crafting those spaces that make you reach for the screenshot button. That's what our level design is about. We're kind of telling these stories that allow you to tell your own stories. Hopefully you're sat here today with some of the people that you forged those adventures with your friends, with your fellow adventurers, with those that you've experienced Azeroth with. So this is a small part of a very talented team and a much larger group that contributes to making Azeroth. So hopefully here today we'll get to see give you guys an insight into how we put that together. So Gary, Colin, do you want to kick us off?
All right, let's get going. OK. So we have over 90 artists on the World of Warcraft team, and all those folks are making props, we call them doodads, that we get to go through and create stories and adventure. It's like having a giant toy box, really, that we get to rummage through and make cool stuff with it. It really is the best job on the team, I think. It absolutely is. So, Colin, let's talk about blocking out a new zone. So everybody starts this process a little different. So Colin is going to show us the process of blocking out a play space, OK? We call it a point of interest, or POI. So like I said, everyone has their own different ways to do this. So let's look at what Colin is doing here. And could you talk a little bit about how you like to begin that process?
Definitely. So we start out with just a flat plane. This is all we have, and we start building from there. I like to get in and kind of make a kit from the awesome environment team and prop team. They give us all of these, and we kind of make sure that they all play well together. Things like rocks and trees and shrubs and even the textures on the ground.
So this, what do we call this? Is what's called a culture kit, right? The artist will go through. There's a lot of process that just goes to this step, right? Just to get to these props that the artists have gone through. So what we're looking at is a culture kit, right?
Yeah. So we have the environment kit, which is all the trees, all the shrubs, all the textures and everything. But we have, this is the Vrykul kit. So this went through concepting and modeling and blockouts and everything. So there's a lot of people had a lot of input on this.
Yeah. So what's your first? So your first step looks like you're just going to, what, put it down and see how everything looks together, right?
Yeah, you
Sort of
play with
figure
it.
out-
And just kind of get a sense of what you want the kit to be, and you can make little stories at this point in your head of, oh, I wanted to have maybe a little mining town or something that the Vrykul were pulling ore out, and so I have that in my head as I kind of work with the kit, and then I generally kind of come and block in a bigger space of just what I know the area is going to look like.
Okay, so you've got let's look at the culture kit a little bit. Isn't that cool how we can move stuff around? You can scale things. This is our editor that you're seeing. Really doesn't get to leave the building too often, so this is a real treat. So you could scale this, you could move them around and try to get, even one rock, you try to get the most use out of every little thing, right?
Oh, yeah. So you can make little clumps and just kind of get like an ecology going together, what feels really good.
Trying to make it look natural.
Yeah, trying to make it look natural.
Exactly. Okay, so the tile sets, if you could zoom out, those textures on the ground, talk about that for a second. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so everything is hand painted in WoW. Come in here and we paint all of the textures down and mold all of the geo for the terrain. So it's all done by hand, which is really fun because you get to get in there and make little rocks and things and just kind of get just a sense of like, here's where a rock's going to be, but here's a nice little grassy meadow too.
Okay, so all this is essentially a part of a culture kit. You've got the tile sets on the ground, the textures, the rocks, the trees, even all those Vrykul props. I can't say Vrykul. Why did you have to pick them? All of this stuff sort of blends together to make a single culture kit. So,
yeah.
So as you're doing this, you're going to start figuring out stories and things that you're sort of how your point of interest is going to play out, right?
Right. So from there, like I said, you start moving with bigger shapes. So you come over here and kind of push and pull a lot of land. So getting like these big, massive sweeping changes and kind of getting just a sense of what the area is going to look like overall.
So you're pushing and pulling terrain with different little brushes that you can edit.
Oh yeah, we can get nice, big, smooth shapes.
Isn't that cool?
Let's see.
He's using a tablet here, pressure-sensitive tablet and a pen. It's painting down textures, putting down props, pushing and pulling terrain.
Yeah, and you kind of build the basic shape of a mountain, and then you got to get in there and detail it out later. But this is kind of the building blocks for the start of it.
I can't believe this is the job, right? This is so fun. So you've sort of had a story in your head that you have a layout and a little idea of what's going to happen. Wow, look at this. So this is a little more fleshed out.
Yeah,
what we got here.
This is a little demo zone that I put together where this is what I want it to look like basically overall, where you kind of get in here, you have the shape of the terrain kind of figured out, and you can get in there and start clumping things together to get a sense of what it's going to look like overall. And I told a little story here. Maybe it's a little guy off on a little island, and he's a fisherman, but like a badass Vrykul fisherman. And
Nice.
yeah.
So this is probably the first time even the art team is going to see everything together in sort of the story setting that you're thinking about. So this is going to be, you said, a demo zone. So this is going to be something you're going to show to other artists and other designers, right?
Yeah. This will go, and everybody will get to look at it, and there'll be feedback iteration and a whole bunch of other things that go along with it. But it's just to break the ice and get everybody talking about it.
Nice. What's that big sphere in the middle there? What is that orange thing?
Oh, it's a point light.
Little
So
point light.
you can see just a little the sphere of influence around. It's just lighting up the little area. There's a little lantern there. So.
Oh, that's cool. So you get control of those point lights. So that's adding color, and I think you can add a little animation to that. It's all part of the storytelling.
You can make them flicker. You can do everything. It's like when you see the nice little torch on the side of the road, and it's just a little flicker.
Cool, cool, cool. Okay, so you have more of the zone.
Yeah, this is just expanding it out a little bit more, blocking in the general shape, getting the mountain a little bit more kind of defined, and kind of getting the scale, setting up a little village and a mine in the back.
Let's talk about scale for a second. That's interesting. So this is an initial point of interest. Do you at this point know who's going to be here and what creatures are going to be here? Are you like sort of building that into the zone, or when does that happen?
From the get-go, you kind of have an idea. So we wanted the Vrykul to be in here, and they're mining out of the gold mine, and maybe they're using bears in the area to pull the mine carts, something like that. It just gives you a cool little idea to go with, so you can run on and make just little awesome little POIs like this.
So I think what's interesting, people aren't telling you what to do. You've taken this stuff, and this is all you. This is you going in, taking the initial pieces, and coming up with those storylines, coming up with those broad perspectives about what this demo zone and point of interest is going to be, right?
Yeah. And so it'll get defined from there, but it's definitely great to come in and just use all the fun toys and start building.
Cool, cool. OK, so you're going to take it to another. Wow,
let's take it a little
look
bit
at this.
further.
This is like a cooking show, so he didn't actually like. We're pulling this part out of the oven, and now look how far you've done. This is the same zone. It really only takes Colin a few hours to get to this point.
Oh yeah, just immediately. Right. It's just like I could bake this out all day. Got it.
So you've got a lot more detail in here, and a lot more has happened.
Yeah, coming in, and you get really fine with the control of the rocks. So we get down and we shape things very deliberately at this point. So this is be kind of, I'll spend days doing this, but not really.
No, you don't. You're fast.
And you can see there's vertex coloring here too. It builds a lot of really interest into the base textures.
OK, I need to stop you there for a second.
Yeah.
Vertex color, that is cool, but I'm not sure what that means if I was. There you go. Vertex color, if I can explain it, is basically taking, like painting with light. And you can paint highlights and shadows and any color you want onto the textures. So he has another brush and he can paint, like, I guess, highlights back onto the rock. Really any color you want.
Yeah, you can tint it, and it brings a lot of life out of it. You can get some dark crevices in there, and we work with the environment team pretty closely to make sure that we're using their textures to the best of our ability, but we're also able to kind of modify them a bit to generate more interest.
Really cool. We weren't always able to do this. This is a big difference between what we're able to now and when we shipped. Can you pull out a little bit, and let's turn vertex shading on and off again. You can see the difference. Look at that. Huge. So that's just with tile sets alone. Still looks great, but boy, you turn on that vertex shading. What a difference. OK, do you have one more level here real quick on the other side?
Yeah, so this will be kind of final polish where we're really getting into the tiny details. We're putting the fence posts in. Like I said, he was a fisherman.
There you go.
And kind of just building the world like that and getting a lot more definition in the shape of the land.
So by the time you've gotten to this level, you've thought about the story that you need to sell here without telling anybody the story. So it's important how things look the very first time someone sees this zone, right?
Right.
So they're probably going to come into that little village, and you want people to make sense of it really quick and get a feel about what is happening here and get this whole story. Plus, you're strongly suggesting where a player should go and how it should work. Why don't you zoom out and get the final thing, and we'll move on to Marcus really quick.
So yeah, I kind of set up this whole area from one point here, just looking out, just to kind of imagine if you were coming in from this angle. So you have the roads defined that kind of lead up to the village in the back.
Fantastic.
And the mine. So
you know what, Colin, sorry to cut you off. I could talk about this all day, but we need to move on to what DeMarcus is doing. Thank you very much, Colin. That was awesome. Give it up for Colin.
That's good.
Excellent work, excellent work. Let's move on to DeMarcus.
So what you've seen there is kind of moving from block out through all the various stages of iteration that a designer might do while they're working up a space. And what we're going to look at on DeMarcus's screen here is we're going to talk a little bit about how you guys create atmosphere and mood.
Absolutely.
And kind of how that plays into storytelling. So tell us a little bit about this space that you've got in front of you and what your intention, kind of what you're intending to sell with this.
So this is actually my favorite part of this process. You heard a little bit about Colin, about how the tools and how it works and the way we lay out. The next part is the fun part for me, which is talking about concept and storytelling throughout the spaces. So this place here would have been a scenario where a couple of artists, level designers, would come up with an idea. This little 3D sketch is what I would like to call this area. And I'm going to channel Gary's cooking show because I've got further iterations down. But this would be an idea of an old witch's home that's dilapidated, and maybe there's trees and stuff that's growing through. So basically, I try to set up a composition to set the scene.
So Marcus, just before you go, so that character we can see in the foreground there, What's that for? That's to help you scale.
Glad you asked. Yeah, yeah. So one of the processes that I like to do is set down a scale reference so that I can keep an eye on everything getting too big or too small. I really want players to focus where I want them to go. So you'll see this as I move over to the next area to help with my scale and composition. So I'll just jump over.
So when you're working on these, when you're trying to create an atmosphere, do you have concept art from the art team that have helped you, or generally what's the process that you go through when you're kind of starting out in an area like this?
Exactly, yeah. So we work with like a concept artist, and myself will do sketches, and then we'll kind of run through some ideas. I'm going to just jump over to another area. And it's a very collaborative process. We work together with everyone's ideas. And let me just kind of jump over to this further area. And this would have been an idea that we would have pitched. It's a little further along. These ideas, you try something, they don't always work. You just kind of keep playing around with it. And it's definitely fun because you get to dial in more of the art process.
So what are you trying to do in this stage to work on that atmosphere? What parts of the tool set are you using to draw the player's attention and kind of really sell the mood that you want to achieve?
Exactly. So things like lighting. In this scenario here, you'll be able to see I've got lights set up in the back along with this path here. That will help a player be able to look back to the area that we want you to go to. And that's something that we would have talked about as a group for gameplay spaces and areas that we would have maybe you get a little quest here and you walk down and maybe the boss is down this way, and so that way we would use lighting to help direct that, or even these panels, the way that I'm laying these down. To kind of help guide the eye in the direction we want you to go in. So yeah, that's one of the tricks that we use.
And so a lot of the times when we're creating these zones, it's not just the big meta level stuff that you're concerned about. One of the cool things that you guys get to do as level designers is you're kind of inserting these little vignettes or stories into the space to try and give it more character. Can you talk a little bit to that and kind of how you guys work?
Yeah, so that falls into the detail. The ideal for us is we like to tell visual stories without using words. So that comes through way of small prop setting. So in this case, I've got this tree with this old swing and the spider web, suggesting that at one point someone lived here and now it's all grown over. And then we also have a little cemetery down here, a little garden. Suggesting that someone was here at one time. And so just try to tell the story that way.
Yeah, these are kind of like the little organic things. And this is the kind of stuff that kind of comes out organically through our level design process. That there's no master plan that was set out at the beginning by one designer that was like, this is everything that's going to be in this area. A lot of the time it's through iteration and collaboration. And a level designer like DeMarcus putting in these small little details, and then a quest designer seeing it and going, oh, that's really cool. That suggests to me that there might be a pumpkin monster here.
Exactly.
Or whatever fires their imagination, because it's this really great back and forth. So when you're working on a space, do you think about that? Or are you kind of like, are you trying to surprise the quest designers? Or,
Yeah, it's fun because you get this opportunity to try to tell a story, and it usually happens organically. You want to go in with a design, an ideal. We'll start off on paper, on a napkin mostly. It'd be cool to have this old haunted house. Maybe there's a ghost here. But then as we develop and make more spaces naturally, some of this stuff just grows. It starts to build itself. The environment talks back to you. So. We discover cool visuals in the craft of making it. So, yeah, it's fun that way too.
Cool. And you've got a final area there with more like the atmospheric setup.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about how you use the lighting. Colin mentioned it earlier that we have the ability to do point lights and dynamic lights. Kind of talk a little about how you use that to to help inform the space for the player.
Absolutely. So like I alluded before to guiding the player, one of our biggest things is we want to tell a focused story. It's an open world, so we want you to go everywhere. Azeroth is filled with stories, so we want you to go everywhere. But when you're in a POI, we want to close it in with lighting and atmospheric fog. In this case, I've highlighted some of the lighting. I've added a couple of point lights to help get the eye to look in this direction. And you can see it's even dynamic as it moves across. So we can do other little tricks like that. A couple other cool little tricks. I've got my color is dying off as it goes back, so I have some of these other lights to kind of help fake some of the background light, and then it goes into a dark area. The other thing is the fog. I really want to focus in on, let's go ahead and highlight this guy here. So this is a little fog plane that I've dropped in, and what this helps me with is stop the player from going so far out. If I were to get rid of it, then it becomes very clear that you can go out that way. So that's another way we play around with fog tricks in the atmosphere.
And those are effects that are built by our GFX team, and so we kind of have a mixture of tool sets. We have some dynamic lighting, and then you can see the God rays that DeMarcus is moving around there. Those are actually made by our FX crew. And they can actually be manually placed. So we kind of get this best of both worlds of kind of procedural dynamic lighting, but also kind of handcrafted, very curated lighting that can help guide the player when we want to create a certain scene.
Yeah, and I'd like to speak to that a little more too. That's the other part that's extremely fun. Working with the rest of our team is definitely a collaborative effort. You could tell here that this prop here has an angle to it. So I would work with the artists, and we would craft that. So we want this to feel separated out. Also with the type of lighting that goes in here, and everyone comes up with an idea to help build the scene. And before you know it, we have a solid piece that we've all worked together on, and we got all be proud of. So
yeah, it's a genuinely collaborative process, and lots of people. And so we're going to move along, and the other part of collaboration is that it leads to iteration, and we iterate a lot. So Gary and Sarah are going, a little bit. Gary and Sarah are going to talk some about that.
All right, thanks, Craig. DeMarcus, awesome, very beautiful, good job. Yes, very, very nice. Okay, so we've seen Colin block out initial zone. We've seen DeMarcus give some nice polish to his zone. So Sarah, let's talk about iteration. All right, so iteration is really just the creative process that we go through to create something really cool. Because believe it or not, we don't always like the first thing we make, okay? As hard as that is to believe, right? Yeah. So sometimes you just have to make something. You might have the best concepts, the best ideas, everything is great, you put it together, you build it, and then you don't like it. Not that it's wrong, it's just you can see now where it can be improved and where it can be made better, I think, right? So, what we're looking at here, okay, you might recognize this. If you were here last year, you may know what we're looking at. Why don't you talk about what we're seeing right here?
Yeah, so thanks, Gary. So this area was created by the very talented Matt Sanders for last year's Blizzcon. And if you were here, you may recall it. And he based this on classic Warcraft themes. So you can see it's this bright, happy color palette. It's this little idyllic village that he made as a quest hub. So it has a trading post, it has a stables, it has a little lumber yard, and down the beach, he thought murlocs would be really fun for something for the players to go fight.
Cool. All right. Well, that looks pretty good. That looks like it's ready for the next stages to ship, I'd say, right?
Pretty close, yeah.
Yeah, but we're not going to talk about that, are we? We're going to talk about iteration. I'll play the part of a quest designer, okay? I'm coming in one day. Hey, Sarah. Yeah, I'm going to need you to delete this entire zone. That would be super. Yeah.
Again?
Yeah, again. No, that never happens, right? Never. Sometimes. Maybe a little.
Yeah, sometimes.
No, what would happen? A quest designer, some other designer would come in and say, hey, Sarah, our storylines are changing. I want to pitch to you what we're thinking. And then Sarah, the two of them, would decide on how best to illustrate the new story arc. So let's say for whatever reason, you guys had your talk, your new story arc is going, and you've decided to make something darker and creepier. So how did you resolve that?
Well, so oftentimes I don't know exactly what someone wants because I can't see the vision in their head. But that's kind of fun because it lets me kind of come up with a vision on my own. And so in this case, my kids have been decorating for Halloween, and they put spider webs all over our stairs. And so that was really creepy. So I thought, all right, spiders are always creepy and wow. And that's kind of where I went. So I looked at the area here, and the initial layout was pretty cool. And you'll say the new story is that this is now an adventure POI and not a quest hub anymore.
Okay.
And so I look at the layout and I evaluate, does this space still work as an adventure POI? And it actually does. When you take into the entire space with, we still have the little village, and we have the lumber mill, and maybe all we need to add to make this a good adventure POI is, a spot for a boss back here in the woods. So maybe.
You don't
go ahead.
really need to completely start over and throw away the whole town.
Of course not.
What you guys have decided could work in the area you've already done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. So I took this area and I said, all right, I'm going to add a little area for a boss to be in. So maybe the Spider Queen lives back here. And I'm going to change this color palette. Instead of the bright, happy colors from before, I'm going to make the grass dead. I'm going to make the trees dead and dying. I'm going to change the bushes to be dead or dying versions. And I'll add webs, right? I mean,
nice.
You can't have spiders without webs and egg sacs and, hanging from the trees and everything that makes it super creepy.
That's cool. That's cool. So it's really just about illustrating another story, a new storyline. What's really interesting we could talk about is that everything you're doing is placed by hand. Nothing's procedural, right?
Exactly.
So all this stuff, all these pieces, you're making your own storylines, and you're making it look natural and realistic just on your own, right?
Yeah, so we do have one aspect is procedural. So we have detailed doodads, and they're the little grasses and bushes that you run through that sit on top of the terrain, and they actually don't show up in our editor here, but in the game you're probably used to those. And those are procedurally generated based on the texture you see on the ground. So based on whatever we've painted, we'll actually create those. But everything else you see here is hand-placed, and we tell our little stories in everything we've put here. So. For example, I've got little stories here of what's happening in this lumber mill, and super webbed up, and I'm giving places for the quest givers to spawn in, webbed victims and stuff like that, because that tells little stories of what happened here. I even have little details here like books and little bits of debris that have fallen down as if villagers have left in haste, stuff like that.
Nice. Okay, so you're thinking of all those things. So when a quest designer comes up to you and wants something different, or when the storyline changes for whatever reason, is that frustrating? Is that difficult to deal with, or is that empowering?
It's a big part of our process, and I think it's actually a really important part of our process. So every area of the game we iterate on multiple times, and sometimes it's fairly small and just a few tweaks here and there, and sometimes it's complete overhauls.
Right.
And like a real-world example. Do any of you guys remember playing through Gorgrond?
I do.
Yeah, well, so do you remember the Botani? So before we shipped, about a month before we shipped, actually, during playtests, we realized that the desert environment of Gorgrond was, while it was beautiful, we felt like we needed more breakup. And we needed more breakup both in terms of that desert environment and in terms of the storyline. And so we actually added the jungle biome and the Botani in that last month. And I think it really made that zone play quite a bit better than it had before, and it was the right thing to do.
It does that, and I like it when that happens. And I think we're lucky that we get to do things over to improve things. Like I said, sometimes you need to build something to know what needs to play better or be more fun.
Exactly.
What happens, so we didn't talk about this column, but what happens if we change the creatures that are going to be in here? Does the size of the play space change how you're going to do the layout?
Yeah, sometimes it does. I mean, right?
A bigger creature may require.
If we were going to put ogres in here, then we might want more space, right? Whereas,
right.
Yeah, in this case, little spiders are going to work in this kind of area. But just look at doorways, right? So if you want a big creature to be invading, it's not going to fit through a doorway, like this kind of human-sized doorway.
Right. So things may have to change there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this looks pretty polished. What are the next steps that are going to happen with this section?
Well, so this is pretty polished. This is ready to go. So if you recall, Colin showed you guys the start of our journey, which was the flat blank plane, and that's where we begin. And this is pretty much the end. So at this point, we finished our level design pass. This is ready to hand off to our content team, and they'll come in and write the quests and tell all of those kind of stories, and add spiders and webbed victims and dead and dying livestock, and all the elements that really bring this area to life.
Very cool, very cool. And they're going to add the quest dialogue and everything else that goes along with that. Awesome. So as you can see, there's a lot of people involved with every step. There's the art team that is creating all of the art assets and the culture kits and the trees and then the buildings, and then we put everything together. Just a dozen people or more that have been involved in this one point of interest. All right, excellent job, Sarah. Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
So we're going to, and just before we start, we've talked a lot about the examples here, and these are obviously special areas we made for Blizzcon, but we've actually got a real-world example that who here has played through the most recent patches and been playing on Argus? Everyone familiar with the islands of Argus? So what we've got here is actually a cool little video. We'll play it a couple of times because it's quite quick. That one of our producers put together while we were building out one of the islands of Argus. And what this kind of shows you is an overhead view of the daily changes that happen in the zone.
That's a lot of iteration.
That is a lot of iteration. So you can see the roads are changing, where buildings are changing, where the texturing is changing. And so this is a real-world example. Hopefully you guys can recognize this. I think that's the first island of Argus. And you can see, as it gets later in the month, things are a little bit more dialed down, and they're kind of just polishing at that point. But at the beginning, there's kind of lots of chaos, and there's lots of things moving around in large spaces, and islands appearing, and things getting pushed off. And that's through that iteration process. The level designer will be working on a space, and you can see things flip there and go different directions, because you'll just be like, oh, what if we try it 90 degrees this way? We're just trying to find the best combination of the assets and all of the abilities that we've been given. And that's just 1 month of work. So you can imagine that happening on every playfield that we make, on every space that we create. We kind of go through this iterative process to try and make the most of everything. OK, so we're going to open it up for some questions now. Hopefully you guys have some questions about how we should have a mic set up on the left-hand side here. OK, so a couple of things to preface. The main FAQ for World of Warcraft is at 4 p.m. today on the main stage. So questions about Battle for Azeroth or WoW Classic, which we're all very excited about those things. But here, we're here to talk about the level design process for World of Warcraft. So please keep your questions to kind of something that we've been talking about here. And any questions for the wider game, you can address to the FAQ at 4 p.m. So if you have a question, please. Have we got people on the side there? Okay.
My favorite part. Let's have it.
Fire away.
All right. Hi, my name is Xavier. I've got 2 questions. The first is, WoW is an open world. So how do the level designers and the quest designers work on the maps at the same time?
That's a good question. Colin, do you want to take that one?
So we work kind of hand in hand. Only one level designer is kind of in one space at any given time, but we're constantly talking back and forth and working at each other's desks just to kind of get a sense of the overall picture.
Yeah. And it depends on the space as well. Sometimes we have to have periods where the level designers are kind of working ahead of Quest, and then because we don't want, depending on the part of the tool, sometimes we don't want to have things changing too much because Quest design really want to fine-tune. We have a very polished process where we want things to look as awesome as they can. So if whole mountains are moving, that's very hard for a Quest designer to put content in for. So we kind of want to make sure that those early parts of the process that you saw in that video, that kind of chaotic movement of, we're not quite sure where things will be yet, Quest design probably hang back at that stage and kind of wait until level design team give them the all clear and kind of like, OK, we've got the most of the GO is done, most of the broad strokes are set, and then the Quest designers can start to work in the spaces when we're not going to be doing any more dramatic changes to the level design.
Good question.
Okay.
Hey guys, Joe from Chicago. Thanks for doing this. Just kind of wondering about traversal. Are you designing mainly to the player only being on the ground and then if they can fly there, whatever? Or is that also taken into account from the beginning?
We do take that into account because, historically we do add flying at some point. So while we do always want to make sure spaces are easy to navigate and traversable, right? So we try to make sure that there are ways through mountain passes, that kind of thing, but we still finish the tops, and we still like to add little Easter eggs and secrets and things for players to find once they do unlock flying.
Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Drew Gelati from Danbury, Connecticut, and I am in college right now, hopefully one day to work at Blizzard. But I want to know what is any tips you guys can give to a 3D environment artist who's coming up in this, like what would be the best programs to use to get familiar with, and so on?
I think mainly make stuff. It honestly doesn't matter which software. We will train you on the software we use. Obviously, there are industry standards like Maya and Max if you're purely doing 3D modeling. I don't think doing either or would hold you back, but make stuff. We say this to students all the time. Get involved in gaming in some way. Build your portfolio, not just through demo pieces, but actually through getting involved in games projects. And they don't have to be big, professional AAA projects. They can be student projects. They can be indie projects. Just try and find ways that you can create art in a real-world environment, too, as well as building your portfolio and doing everything that you would tell an art student to do. I always encourage people to get involved in making games and just go out and get your work, because it also teaches you some of the really essential soft skills that come with making a game. You've learned here today, there are hundreds of people involved in making just a single space for World of Warcraft. So the more practice you can get working in creative, collaborative spaces and being able to iterate, that'll serve you very well in looking at a career at Blizzard, because one thing you've got to be able to do here in Sherville is take feedback and kind of work with each other.
Can I add one more thing? In your portfolio, don't do something we've seen before. We like the Pandaren buildings, they're awesome, but we've done them. Do something creative, something you haven't done before. You need to prove to us that you can do the job you would be asked to do when you work here, which is something new, something creative. Cool?
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kevin from Salt Lake City, and I was wondering how you approach trying to create the random nature of actual nature. Do you spend a lot of time, say, looking at stock photos of, say, forests or things? Because when we try to place, create something, it's very frequently our human tendencies of making things ordered, like trees evenly spaced, as opposed to actual nature where things just kind of happen at random.
You want to take that? Yeah. So that's so true. A lot of artists go through that in the beginning, and level designers. But just be a student of reality and make sure things are grounded. A lot of us look at photos, we go out and take photos and references, and really when you're walking through the spaces, you've seen it millions of times. When you're making a landscape, are we looking at the same popsicle trees all over? Are we duplicating? You really want to. What I like to do is make an individual cluster. I call them little vignette pieces, and you just basically focus on that individual piece and then build up your little library. And then you look at the piece as a whole, and just kind of move them around and walk through the spaces, because you can easily build in a macro scale, and then before you know it, everything looks like Cybertown. Everything's duped all over the place. So it is a tricky thing. It looks so simple. If you can look at it, I'm just going to make a field. That's easy. But it turns out less is more, and it's something that I work at really hard. We all work at it, but it takes practice. So
That's an excellent question. If I could just jump in here. I love that question because it really is one of the cornerstones of level design, making things natural. people really are clear about what nature looks like, and if they notice it, we've done it wrong. So we want to guide players using forest and trees and rocks and the very best sort of suggestion. This is the best way to go. This is the most exciting direction to go. By facing a rock a certain way, putting a forest. People don't see forest. It's static over here. Big forest, this path is going to be the way to go because it's an open world. Yeah. You can go anywhere you want to. So we want to make these strong nature suggestions on how to get there and where to go. Yeah. That's one of my favorite parts of making the game is guiding the player.
And true story, we were coming on the bus for practice on Thursday, and I tell you, DeMarcus was taking pictures out the window of trees. And that's just between Blizzard HQ and Anaheim Convention Center. They're always looking for examples of how the real world looks to inform that reality.
Yeah, great question. I wish I had a Pepe on me I could give you, but I'm all out.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bruce from San Francisco. I love using the StarCraft 2 editor, and I loved having a chance to see the WoW editor. My question is, how do you guys collaborate with the tools team to build the software that you need to do your job, and how do you work with them on a day-to-day basis?
So I actually worked on the tools QA team. So I was testing the editor and just making sure that it worked properly and all the new features and everything. So when I came over, I had a great sense of what the editor was and how to kind of move things along. So now I work with the engineers, pretty much weekly at this point to get what we need to be a little bit more efficient, to be faster, to just quality of life things. It's very much we just walk over to their desks. Hey, this is causing me pain. Can you help me out? And it's generally a pretty open conversation about it. In fact, our tools lead is hanging around back here, making sure everything is working.
Yeah, exactly. This is very scary right now, so hopefully
it's collaborative
works.
In that space as well. Like we're constantly working together to try and not just improve our process, but improve our tools as well. So they're constantly evolving. We literally get change notes for the tools almost on a weekly basis. There's a team committed to just doing that. On a game like World of Warcraft, that's vitally important because it means that we're constantly adding to the tool set that these guys can use to create the world.
Mm-hmm. Organic flow.
Hi, I'm James from Dallas. I'm involved with building sets for a lot of these out here we have Overwatch and StarCraft. So for me, it's kind of come full circle because I got into it because of World of Warcraft. And I was just wondering about the theatrical background. For me, it's come full circle. I went through theater, and now I'm back at WoW. And if you had anything to add about theater.
Oh, it's very relevant, especially in something like Overwatch. But our world, not so much since it's you can go anywhere, but we still try to use those same properties, principles, I guess, that you would use in theater. Like I said, guiding a player, making a path the way it should look. Lighting is a big thing. Lighting can do a lot for you. It can tell you if something is dangerous or tell you if something is cold, mood. Music as well, I guess that's another theater thing. I work a lot with the music department and our sound department. We have our own guys that come in. I'll make a video of a zone I like. I'll pick some music from some other movie, and it takes a while because you got to find the one that clicks, and then you're like, this is nice, and I'll talk to Russell or Jay and someone and say, look at this, how this sounds, and it fits together. So we got lighting, we got sound effects, we got music. All that stuff plays a part. So I guess it is sort of tied into theater and cinematics and all together.
Specifically scenic design.
Scenic design, yeah. Right. Well, yeah. Music alone. If we just had a desert, the music is going to tell you, oh, this is a dangerous desert, or it's a safe desert, it's a happy place. And the sound, the music, the lighting, everything is going to do that too, just like it does in theater.
Are there any guys on your team are there any guys on your team specifically that have theater background?
Maybe in our sound team, but none that I'm aware of. I don't think so. But
we've got a couple with film backgrounds.
Yeah, that's true.
No theater that I.
Yeah.
We're all big fans of any media like that, any theater and cinematics, everything.
Thank you.
Yeah, my background is in actually biology, which I think helps me create environments.
Oh, that's such a pain too, because I'm like, this would be cool plants. She's like, it would never be there.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Add more grass around that water. Water makes
I'm
things
like,
grow.
we
Come
got
on,
flying
guys.
carpets and stuff. It's okay to have a mushroom in the snow. And she's like, I don't know. That conversation happened too. We were like,
Hi, Turan Kopter from Turkey. I wanted to ask you a question about bridges. I know in World of Warcraft, when you create roads, you usually use textures, and you just place them around so that players can follow as a road. But when you create bridges or any type of those type of structures, when you need to bend them, do you use any spline modes to curve them, or do you work with the modelers to ask them, could you make this a little bit curved or so?
Yeah, well, we don't do it personally. We go and we talk to the modelers, and we can ask them to make changes if we need it. Usually, they give us something, and we work as best as we can to use that piece, as long as it's within what we need. So if we need a custom piece, we go to them, and they can change it for us, and that way we can kind of get to that end goal. But generally, we just kind of use what they give us.
Yeah. Also, sometimes we're involved in what the architecture, like the idea, the look and feel of the POI. So if the theme has that kind of motif, that's something that would follow through in like a bridge or something like that. If it's a rickety old bridge, then maybe that would make sense for it to arc. And a lot of that, like Colin was saying, gets worked on through the art team, and then we'll have a little input on how the environment connects the two pieces. So we'll stage it, set up the composition for it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Samuel. I'm from Ann Arbor, and I had a question on, World of Warcraft. As you guys have mentioned a lot, is very open world, and you guys talked about guiding players through your points of interest in those microcosms of environment. But what sort of tricks do you use to guide players through a large world, especially when players tend to try and just kind of go straight to an area?
I can jump on that. Yeah, definitely, like I was saying in the demo, we do little tricks like with the road. Sometimes the way the terrain cuts, we'll try to set up lines in the road, so subconsciously you just kind of see that you want to go in such a way. We kind of want to set up nice vistas, and then use lighting, trees, props to help guide you. A lot of times you may see plants and foliage, but we are really actually, you'd be surprised at how much we use like a little blade of a bush to hide a line to get you to go in another direction, and it usually works. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, we just have to play test through it, but lighting the path, lighting up, using vertex to light up the ground path. Real quick, was that Ann Arbor, Michigan?
Yes.
Woot, me too. I was born. Anyway.
Yeah, I think we also do a lot of stuff where we'll frame a shot. So you'll kind of set up something where a player is going to be quested to. So you get the big yellow marker, and you open your map, and you're like, I'm going to beeline right there. So if we know that, then we can set up a really awesome way to get there. So there's a lot involved with quests too, and flowing to the player.
Yeah, the flow of the zone helps dictate a lot of where we'll put the landmarks and how we'll frame them for the player.
Cool. Yeah, good question.
Cool.
Hello, my name is Eero. I'm from Finland. But my question is, you showed us the small point of interest and how you create them, but how do you connect these small points of this interest into zones and initially to the whole world? How do you connect these small scenes to our areas, and how do you connect the areas then to the bigger world?
That's a really good question. It's something that we're working on a massive scale. These are just kind of like small demos, but when we're working in a whole zone, so we kind of have a general sense of where we want the main points to be, but then we work most of our time on the interstitial part between them to kind of make it cohesive, so just getting the zones to flow really well together.
Right. I mean, if you look at that Argus top-down that we showed you, you could see how there were actual POIs moving around, right? So as we build the zones, we also try to balance it and make it feel like a world, not just a couple of spaces with roads in between them.
Yeah, it's really important to have that organic phase in the beginning because on such a macro scale, we still need to tell a visual story on the micro scale. So there is different phases. We work massive to smaller to smaller. So it'll naturally kind of build itself along with the story and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Hi there, my name is Aaron. I'm from Somerville, South Carolina. I got kind of a lighter question for you guys. Whenever you start to finish up a zone, do you ever like find some secluded corner or cave or something like that and hide like an item or an asset as your like personal signature?
Oh my God.
Never.
Be careful what you say.
Yeah. So you may have seen skeletons around the world,
Right.
and that's actually one of the areas that we have a lot of fun with. So we tell little stories of how someone died. And yeah, we have a twisted sense of humor. So I have one I did in Pandaria, and if you see a little pond, and there's a raft, and there's some flowers and some food and stuff. It looks like it was a nice little romantic spot. But if you dive down under the water, there's a skeleton, and he's down there, and the flowers are wilted. He's got a bunch of the wine bottles with him, and he got jilted. So we do stuff like that everywhere.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's definitely about 100 Alec plushies hidden around on Draenor, so.
Yeah. Yeah, everywhere.
We're not supposed to do that stuff.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody.
So cool.
Hi, I'm Jessica James. I'm from Costa Mesa. My question's about terrain. You mentioned doing section sketches to inform your design, and I'm wondering, does that mostly inform landforms, or are you using tools like a landscape architect would do, like grading plans or section elevations?
So for me, I tend to need to get a sense of grading and also creativity with the way the POI will eventually be laid out within the space. So I'll do a sketch just to kind of work it out in my head. And then when I'm pitching it to other designers and artists, it's a way to another form of communication. The other thing is going right into the editor, because you can edit just as fast with the terrain and accomplish the same thing. It's just we all have different styles to get there, and mine, I have more of a heavy art background, so drawing is just second nature for me to just sketch it out. So that's how it works for me.
Yeah, I mean, I do 3D completely, so I'll just get in and start pushing and pulling. And when we actually are using the editor, we also have the game client open, and so we can sit there at game level and watch as we sculpt the terrain, and see how it's coming together and make it feel like a real landscape. And yeah.
Yeah, running around is definitely the biggest part of it, because you'll get a sense of how it feels just running around in the game client. Something that looks like perfectly as you would see it in nature doesn't always translate well into the game. So
Right.
it's one of those things you're just always constantly pushing and pulling on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more of a concept-y, fast-paced communication thing.
Hi, I'm Philippe from Rhode Island, and I just had a quick question about certain textures and objects in the game. So I see like zeppelins and Orgrimmar with like very flat ropes and like kind of seems sort of oldish, but then I see the barrels and like the candles in these new instances, and they look awesome. Is there like a certain thing that stops you from updating those old textures, and is there a certain challenge, or are you guys just too busy making new stuff?
Busy making new stuff, and that's really the art team. We are constant as designers, we are constantly asking the art team for more and new, and we make these amazing expansions that add so much more to the world. We've just got to balance at certain points of kind of we could go back and retexture everything, but who knows how long that would take. Whereas we want new stuff too. So the art team have a hard job, and they've constantly got to assess that balance and try and make sure that they're providing new things as well as going back and retexturing. Sometimes it'll be driven by content. If we're going back to revisit a space for new content, it might get a little bit of a spring clean, like we did with Karazhan, for example. So it depends on the content, and we're trying to strike a balance there. Because we could spend all time, constant. You know, there's always our ambitions always outstrip how much time we have to be able to do everything we could imagine.
The game is a few years old, and there is a progression of performance that has happened over the years. And there were things we just couldn't do years ago that we can do now, and we can put more resolution into things now than we could before. And there's going to be discrepancies between what you're seeing in Orgrimmar, one of the shipping cities, to what you're going to see in some of the new zones that we're doing today.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Daniel from Sacramento. I just have a quick question. Do you guys work exclusively with the pens, or do you ever switch to the mouse at all, or is this just a...
I don't even work with a Cintiq. Actually, I just have a Wacom at my desk. I use the mouse for placing props and things, so I'm constantly switching, around to whatever feels right for that task.
And I have the most convoluted process ever. I use everything. I work like Colin, but then I also use Cintiq when I'm painting. So yeah, it's all over the place.
I actually use a little mini gamepad instead of a keyboard.
There you go.
It works better for me.
Thank you.
It's whatever you're comfortable with. If people don't know, these are Cintiqs. They're just monitors you can draw on top of. That's what they mean by that. And there's these tablets, which is what I like to use, so people can use both. Pressure sensitive or whatever. Good question.
Hi, I'm Carlos. I'm from the Bronx. My question's about the transitions. I know that when we started the session, started talking about how you sort of worked small and sort of expanded from there. And it's a little related to the earlier question about making sure everything was natural. One of the things I remember about Legion was everybody was really complimenting about how well the zones flowed into each other. Like going from High Mountain to Stormheim felt really natural. Whereas, say, in Vanilla, like nothing else looks like Deadwind Pass and nothing else looks like Stranglethorn Vale. How easy or difficult is it, between then and now and into the new expansion, is it to sort of make sure that as you create these new continents and zones, going from one to the next still feels like you're sort of naturally moving through an entire world and not just here's one little box of quests, here's your next little box of quests?
I would definitely say it's an art form in itself, especially in terms of the transition from one POI, from one zone to the next zone as well. Having an understanding of the macro and what we're trying to get at overall, and then just doing the blending in between. Definitely lessons have been learned from the first, from way back to now. We've all played, and we got to a point where you can fly now, so that's in our mind as we're working. So there's a lot of lessons that has been learned.
Yeah, I mean, Vanilla was never designed for flying. And when we did Cataclysm, we actually spent a significant amount of time making mountains that connected the zones. And we had huge spaces to fill, because just from the design get-go, we weren't planning on that. So it wasn't as big of an issue then. And now we know at some point we're going to be flying. So we definitely plan it out from the beginning to make sure that everything connects in a way that makes sense and is cool and has areas to explore and all that.
Okay, folks. I think that's about all we have time for today. So I'd like to thank you all for coming. It's an awesome opportunity. It's really great. BlizzCon is awesome for all of us because we get to meet all of you and we get to hear your feedback and hear about how much the game means to you. So thank you very much for coming. Hopefully you enjoyed this insight into our level design. And I'd like to thank all the team for taking part and everyone else who made this possible.
Good job.
Thank you for attending DesignCraft, Building Blocks of Level Design. Up next, stay a while and listen. True Stories Live.